Hello and welcome to the world's first Paul Weller fan podcast. I'm Dan Jennings. This is the story of 66, a celebration of the brand new album from the legend that is singer, songwriter and musician Paul Weller. This new series features podcast conversations with many of the huge talents that have been involved in the creation of Paul's 17th solo studio album. What I hope is that these podcasts give you a deeper insight into the creation of the new LP and that sheer joy of the creative process. And ultimately, it all comes back to the songs. What you'll hear about this LP, probably more than any other, is an album packed full of collaboration. Welcome to the story of 66. On this episode of the podcast, I'm chatting to Andrew Chalk, aka Chalky. This fella has been Suggs' best mate for over 50 years, and a guy whose poem has become one of the lead singles on the new album from Paul Weller, a song called Nothing. You're going to hear why Chalky created that poem, what those words meant to him, and how that becomes a song, and what that means to be on a Paul Weller album with a co-write for a guy who wouldn't consider himself to be a songwriter. I love the fact that we've heard Paul Weller's angle on this song. We've heard Suggs' angle on this song. Now let's hear the story from where that song began. But not only that, you're going to hear about this love of the Jam, the Style Council, all things mod as well, and the connections that Chalky has with Mr. Weller, has with Suggs, on a really special episode of the podcast as well. Let's get into it. I don't know whether to introduce you as Andrew or Chalky, because everybody calls you Chalky, right?
Yeah, call me Chalky. I'll tell you where Andrew came from. Andrew came from after 50-something years. I decided to become a counsellor, so a therapist. And Chalky as a sort of client, you know what I mean? I'd say Andrew for something, and it just caused everyone a lot of confusion. So Chalky's easiest.
Chalky. All right. Look, this is a real delight to hear your story on this Paul Weller album, your connection to it. I mean, we'll dig into how we get to this song and this co-write on a Paul Weller album, but I should ask, I mean, first of all, it must be really lovely to just see your name on an album, right? That's mad.
Yeah, I know. The weird thing is this, on an album about a bit of poetry about my best mate, and my best mate and Paul then collaborated on it. It's just like, while I was sitting there doing sod all up in my cabin, doing nothing, and it all just kind of evolved around me. So it feels very special, you know, to have a bit of poetry about my best mate, and him and Paul wrap some music around it, and I think they've made something quite magical out of it.
Well, first of all, let's dig into this friendship then. So let's start there. So you go way, way back. But Suggs said to me, he was born on Friday the 13th, you on Halloween, and what a pair of nightmares you both were, was what he said to me.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Nightmares. Think of like Artful Dodger and Oliver Twist, except two Artful Dodgers. You know, it's kind of, you know what I mean, in kind of Victorian London skullduggery. We got up to no good, and but kind of, you know, mischievous, maybe, would be the best way to describe it, yeah.
How did you meet then?
Well, Suggsy lived at one end of Oxford Street in a Peabody Mansions estate, and I lived at the other end of Oxford Street on Lisson Grove Estate, and kind of in the middle was Soho, where both my dad and his mum used to frequent. Basically, they lived there, and coaching horses and the French and all the little actors' clubs. And they ended up going out together, briefly. Two volatile characters, I mean, our relationship lasted much longer than theirs. I think theirs finished with sticking a bottle of champagne across his head in Kettner's, but then me and him got together, and kind of a bit inseparable then. You know, it's we were like 12, 13 years old, and as Suggsy always reminds me, I get a bit rose-tinted about the Lisson Grove working class estates, and he says, don't ever forget, Andrew, we were so poor. We were the people that the people on the estate looked down on. We had nothing. So I suppose what happened was we just knocked about together, you know, we became inseparable and just used to spend every moment together, you know what I mean? It's any time we could, we'd be out and about, and generally you'd be out and about in the West End and Soho at 13, 14 years old, or wherever fancy took us, really.
So this is, what, early 70s then, I would guess, right?
It'd be around about, I suppose it'd be about 73. I say, it all becomes a bit vague, does it? I'm guessing.
Clearly, before Suggs starts getting into music, this is all pre-madness. So your friendship all predates that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Except in a way that is strange. There was all this kind of a synchronicity between all the two-tone stuff and madness. And because me and him, even before we knew anything about madness, when we were still really young, we used to go to this arcade in Tottenham Court Road where they had a jukebox which we could sort of fiddle somehow. and we found this song that we loved. Well, I never heard of anyone else like it. We'd never heard it anywhere, and it was One Step Beyond by Prince Buster, which was strange, isn't it? The two 14-year-old lads found this song, and we would play that continuously, you know. But I suppose there was always a kind of bohemian element to how we were brought up. There was always a creative, if not somewhat drunkard edge to our parenting, you know what I mean? It was always there was a creative edge to everything. It seemed quite normal to just sort of be a bit off the wall, you know, to take things as they come. What we took for normal was probably like quite adventurous for a lot of other people, or a big wow. You know, we used to walk the streets around London and the West End, and basically that was our playground. It's the biggest playground. We had nothing, but it was the biggest playground in the world. You know, it was we were doing what the tourists paid money for.
And a shared love of music. I know Suggs got into the punk when it came along, but you weren't massively into it, from my understanding.
Oh, I used to go to the, I found out the Roxy was only open for 3 months. We used to go to the Roxy all the time, and I used to like watching bands, but I was always more into my clothes, and I love my music, but it was more like I was down the Global Village or Edward's Little Soul Boy funk clubs and dancing. I loved dancing, but music, I liked it. But yeah, it was cool. You know, it was great. Who didn't like music?
Well, we'll talk about Madness and your connections with that, but you are in one of the videos. Was it One Step Beyond You? And they're talking of dancing.
I think I was in a few. I don't know. I do know that during that they used to play, like, you know, German Top of the Pops and Belgian Top of the Pops on the European tour. And if anyone didn't fancy turning up and miming, I'd kind of fill in, you know, as a rodeo. Say, Chalky, go and do the play guitar, you know, sit in the background. I think I played every member of the band at Suggs, really, at some point. So, yeah, okay, cool, and I'd go along. There
was this dance that you used to do with one of the members of the band as well, the Bullfighter, I think it was called, wasn't it?
Was it?
Well, you used to run at each other and headbutt each other.
Well, we wouldn't run. Yeah, we'd kind of sort of do this strange dance, and we'd miss each other a lot and then headbutt each other, but it's more missing each other. It's like a kind of, you could call it a bullfight or a tango or something, or I don't know. Whatever it was fun and it worked, and it was very different, and it's our invention. And
and Suggs is not Suggs at the point you meet him. He's Graham, but you were there when Suggs, the name, came about.
Well, we have a different opinion of this. See, my dad gave me a book of Who's Who on jazz. He was at that time where you were like, you could go around. It wasn't like criminal damage to go around and spray your name up. It was just what you kind of done, really. No one noticed the difference in this shithole that London was then. You know what I mean? It probably added a bit of colour. But he couldn't keep on going around with GNC, which was his tag at the time, because he his whole dealer couldn't keep him around the ear. So he needed a nom de plume, and I swear he opened my book of Who's Who of Jazz and pressed a pen in it just at any name, and it came under John Suggs, who was some trumpet player from the 1930s or something. And he's got some other story, but let's not ruin a good story with the facts. That's kind of how it happened, one way or another. That's how it happened. You know, he opened the book up, put a pen in there, and that's what came up.
Well, I love the idea that from that point on, he just tells everybody, even the teachers, he's like, I'm now Suggs.
Yeah. How you said about Chalky earlier on, I've got school reports at home where they've got Chalky, you know what I mean? Where they took my own back. They got their own back on me at the end of the year.
And was that your graffiti tag then, Chalky?
I can't even remember what mine was, but I wasn't really into graffiti that much. I'd give it a go, but I think I picked a really crappy name as well. Weren't that into it, really. Do you know what I mean?
So your thing's the soul music, but also looking sharp. So the clothes, I mean, this is an expensive business, getting the latest fashions and stuff, and so you're not doing that, but you care about your appearance, obviously,
especially when sort of as you got a bit old, 15, 16, and then moving into the madness thing, you know, I was always a bit loath to sort of, you know, like the 17-hole Dr. Martens rolled up with the bleached jeans and all that came in a bit later from what we were used to, and I could never quite bring myself to do it. You know, I had to have my jeans rolled down with one turn up on it, or a pair of stay press and calf leather bros, or I was much more sort of a suede head than skinhead. It is much more suited me. And Suggs used to laugh at me and go, talking to someone, go, yeah, he's just a soul boy at heart.
That's so funny, though, because there's probably more of a deeper connection with you and Paul Weller over that than there is with Suggs and Paul Weller. That was his absolute love.
Me and Paul, I swear, we could talk, I guarantee you, we could talk for hours and hours and hours about what makes mod. Honestly, I could do 5 podcasts with him about how you should wear a different pair of shoes and how this and that, and the intricacies of how you speak to the world. You're that bit of peacock in you that knows just that little thing that makes a difference to how you look. Yeah, that was my love, I suppose. Yeah, there's much more. With Paul, I always like the jam, but I always think in my head is and he was a mod, but I don't think he really properly came out. I think he came out mod with Style Council. Because as soon as I saw the beige Mackie was wearing the Italian trousers, the sort of the tassel, like those little, that Italian look, I loved it. That spoke to me. That was what I would wear, and I still do. Yeah, I loved the way he wore his clothes then. Don't let him know that, will you? Know what I mean? I liked it. I begrudgingly liked how he dressed. That's as far as I'm going, all right?
All right, yeah.
You're all right then. That's not bad.
But this is pre-internet. So where were you learning about mod? Where were you digging into this stuff?
I was never a caricature skinhead, you know what I mean? Like wear the label. And I was never really a caricature mod. I'm not one of those stripy shirts and a Parker and a Vespa. I always had a feeling. And a feeling, I think Paul says that a lot, is it's in you. It's a feeling in you. And you should move with that. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be stuck somewhere. You should be able to move with it. And I always had I don't know, I could walk along a rack of clothes and go, that'll work. And take a bit of a chance. And I don't know, mate, it's like, how do you like music? I think it's something that you have. It's how you have your altruistic side or your flair. But I was always a bit of a peacock anyway. I liked that working class that goes way back, that working class thing of, it's been a shit week, it's Friday night, I'm going to dress up my best and go out. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out looking my best. There was a touch of about that about me, I think.
Paul talks to me about it being almost a faith for him. It's a religion.
An inner religion. It's something that's inside of you, I think. And you can see it everywhere. I just sent Paul a book. I don't know if you got it. But it had Spanish bullfighters in it and maybe men from the city or Noel Coward, or you get the elegance and the style of how they dress. It's how you carry yourself. And that comes from another thing. I think there's something about wearing the clothes, but having something in you that the way I liken it is when, and I don't know if Paul might agree on this, it's where you wear a blue shirt and you're lined up with 19 other people who are wearing a blue shirt, but people come to go, I like that shirt. It's not got a label on it. There's something about what you're wearing that is exactly the same as everyone else's, but different.
Okay.
Different. Yeah. I don't know. I think Paul's right in as much as it's a religion, but it's an inside one, and it's being able to discern that touch of style, not fashion.
Got you. Oh, nice. Okay. I mean, the time in the 70s when you and Suggs are together and you're wandering the streets of Soho, getting up to all sorts, it's quite a volatile time. It's quite a violent time at some of these music gigs, and you've got the mods and the rockers and all that type of stuff going on. So it sounds terrifying, quite frankly.
Well, it's more terrifying the more you identify with one of the tribes. But I was like, I could swip and swerve, you know what I mean? I was wearing a pair of carpenter jeans with wrinkle picker shoes and cropped head and a Fred Perry. So they didn't know I was a soul boy, punk, rocker, Teddy. No one had any idea. And I often used to just travel London, going to clubs on my own, even at 15. And I'd go to Edwards, say on Tuesday, I think it was. I'd go to Southgate Royalty for rock and roll on a Thursday. I used to go to Acklam Hall to watch dub bands under the Westway, like the original when all those bands, Burning Spear and you name them, loads of those roots moving into dub.
Love it. So like things like Creation Rebel and things like that.
Yeah. It was White Man Smith Palais. I was the only one in there, and it was proper dreads and rasters in there. And they'd look round and they just thought, well, you've got to be here for the music. So, and I was, you know what I mean? I'll just go in there and just listen and chill. So I used to kind of go everywhere. I loved, as much as there were a lot of tribes there, that I saw that as an opportunity rather than a danger.
Now, this friendship with Suggs is one that's lasted, what are we talking now, over nearly 50 years? Is that right? Oh, 50 years, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What is it that connects you that, most friendships do not last that long, right? We fall out with people, we go our separate ways, we move on in life. But what is it that's kept you two together in that way?
That was what made me write the piece of poetry to Suggs, because I couldn't quite work it out. So I tried to put something to paper that helped me explain, I didn't know I was going to explain to anyone else, but to help me explain to myself that kind of odd uniqueness that our friendship has. Not so much why it's lasted, but what it was, because whether it was then, it must still be now. And it's a strange friendship to have when I think about it. So I wrote the poem, and really it's about Like everything else goes on in life and there are events and we move on and we're this and that and the other. But because we started with nothing and we shared nothing to begin with, we had no, I mean, literally, we couldn't go out to the pictures unless we bumped in. We had no money. We couldn't do anything, but we had each other. So we knocked about with each other. And that's what our friendship was built on. So in a way, there was nothing that could ever get in the way of that friendship continuing. There was, what are they going to do? Take away what? Well, we had nothing in our friendship to start with. So if we ripped it all apart and we're left with nothing, that's what we started with anyway. And we got on with that. So I think there was an element of me thinking like, at times I've not been the best version of myself. And at times maybe Suggs hasn't been the best version of himself either. And when you're like that, there's so many people offer advice and go, perhaps you should do this, and perhaps you should do that, and perhaps you want to stop doing this. And we've never done that with each other. It's just like, all right, mate, you're all right. Being a dickhead? Yeah, I'm being a dickhead. All right, okay. But it doesn't matter because being a dickhead is just something that comes and moves along and then leaves. It's just about being there when everyone else has finished with their advice and got something to say and whatever it is, that he's been the person next to me and goes, you're right. It doesn't matter. That's who we are. That's what we are. We don't criticise each other in as much. Well, we do, but banter-wise. But it's kind of like the wallpaper of a life with all the events on it, huge events, big events, loving events. But somehow, wherever the pictures are, they hang on a backdrop of this friendship that has always been there. Suggs always says, you can't make new old friends. And there comes something about the passage of time you spend together that, as a friend, you've witnessed maybe the most important thing you do. You've witnessed that other person's journey, and that other person's journey has witnessed yours. And you're still there. Do you know what I mean? It's just a privilege to share that journey, just to witness and see it all unfold and not have to phone him up. And when we do, we're 13 again or whatever. But it's to witness all of that and to have shared a journey. And the longer the journey goes, the more meaning and purpose it has without having to say anything. It doesn't have to say anything. It doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to do anything. But I do know this. It might sound a bit kind of spiritual, but I do know that it's such a miracle to have a friendship for that long. But it's a miracle to have how we met, not the event. But if I'd have been born 50 years apart, it would have never happened. If we'd have been born 6,000 miles apart, it would have never happened. We just fell together at that time and that space. And I know that if I had been born in another time or 2,000 miles apart, I honestly believe that somehow I would have felt the lack of him. Somehow I would have lived that life, parallel life, going, what's that thing? That purpose, that sense, the point of it all. And maybe just a bit of it, his friendship helps to make sense of it all. It's
that's so lovely, man. That is such a lovely thing. Let me ask you, is poetry a natural thing for you? Is that something you do anyway? Or is this just a single outpouring of, because you sounds like you've got away with words whilst you talk to me there.
No, I've always wrote poetry for myself. It's my way of seeing some, like those house poetry. I've always done, but I've never really given it to anyone. I just write it to explain things to myself from a different perspective that makes sense to me. Like in those pub quizzes where they give you a weird object and you have to guess what it is. And you go, oh, it's a pencil sharpener or a cheese grater. Poetry for me is like taking life and going, well, we all know that's a cheese grater, but here, have a look at it this way, and then show a different perspective from a different angle that you might not have seen before or become aware of before. And it opens something out. It goes, I can see it this way now. You don't automatically go, that's a cheese grater, move on. You take an emotion or a feeling or a known unknown, something you kind of know, but you can't quite get to it. So you just turn it around and look at it and come out with a few words and you go, well, that makes sense. Enough for me to pass on.
And you usually share the stuff you've written, or it's usually just for you? It's just for you, right?
Yeah, it's just for me. It's a way, some people write songs to write down things to explain to themselves. I've never used it as a kind of conduit to show other people. It's always been sort of for me to just potter about and find out about life myself.
Let's look at how this then becomes a Paul Weller song and also the reaction to it. Because I've seen like the press over the past couple of weeks where they're talking about this album. And one at the weekend was talking about how Paul Weller had written this song as a love song to his wife, Hannah. Obviously not. I mean, as much as, and even Paul's own interpretation of the song, he doesn't talk about that. He's talked about something else. There was another interpretation whereby it was written by somebody who was homeless and had absolutely nothing. But yours was, it was written about your relationship with Suggs. So how did you come to land on this poet, but then how did you share it with him? Was it a voice note? Was it written down on did you send it in the post? What was it?
Well, there's certain things. It's interesting to hear. I don't know anything about what people have written about it, to be quite honest. I haven't looked. But that global, there's nothing that, it is about Suggs. It is about our friendship. But maybe part of it is the very first line. I made sure that I didn't use me and you, I.
Us and we.
It's us and we, which makes it non-third person, which means it's about us and we. And I think people get that community thing, it's us and we make this, it's us and we. There's not a me and you. There's not a separation in friendship. It's not that and that, it's this. Like me and you now is us and we, if you think about it. It's much nicer. It's much more collaborative. So it's a point of saying us and we. So maybe that's why people are able to apply it to themselves. If I put he and me, then it's already getting too prescriptive. Like I said, I was just sitting there trying to make sense of our friendship. I don't know what had happened, whether we don't know ourselves what it's all about. We don't really bother. But I think something had come up as, I don't know. This Suggs your mate. I went, mate, is he my mate? It's a friend. It confused me, and I thought it's time I had a look at it. So I just sat down and sort of wrote this poem, a bit of poetry, and then I was talking to him on the phone. I said, I wrote a bit of poetry. They're really offhand about our friendship. Yeah, I'll send it to us. Very kind of him, you know what I mean? I went, yeah, all right then. So I sent him on text. Sent his poem on text. And about 2 weeks later, he said, I was in the studio, Paul, and we were talking about friendship. And I showed him your text that you sent me. He loves it. He really likes it. And he wants to rap. He said he wondered if he could rap a bit of music around it. Yeah, of course, what, Paul Weller? Rapping a bit of music around some bit of poetry that I wrote. Yeah. Then Paul got in touch and said, I said, of course, mate, crack on. And in fact, we'll get back to the credit, the sort of lyricist bit. And yeah, that was it. I just thought he was going to have a sort of he's having a bit of a jam. I didn't know anything about this album or anything about it at all. And he sent me a sort of rough copy of it and said, what do you think? And I really liked it. I said, Paul, that sounds great. Really good. Kind of thought that was it. He'd had a quick jam and he said, yeah, okay, well, we're going to take it into the studio. And then months later, I think there was something, months later, he finished it off. And then he was saying that he's going to put it, I think I've had about half of this out later through people Facebooking me. So I saw your thing on so-and-so. But Paul sent me a thing through, so maybe we should do some business stuff, like PRS. And I said, look, Paul, all I'm interested in really, all I really care about, what's really special is that it would be music and lyrics by Andrew Chalky and Suggs and Paul Weller. To be able to list it with my best friend and Paul, look, this is a Paul Weller podcast, ain't it?
Yep.
Right, so let me ask you the question. How much money would you like, or how much would you like to be named on that track? It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
No, exactly. I mean, there's no money in the world, right? That'll do. That'll do.
That's it. And it's like money just seemed a bit sort of petty and vulgar, but you have to do these things. So we went through it, and Paul was really generous. And next thing I heard, it was going to go on the album. About that. And the next thing I heard, my mate said, "Oh, your single."
It's been played on the radio.
I heard Paul being interviewed, and I was like, "Oh right, okay, yeah, great." It's really, I don't know, it's it's really nice. There's a lovely feeling about it, and I think they've done such a brilliant. They've caught the whole essence of what I could say anyway. It's like whether that's their thing or whether they picked up on the bit of poetry or Suggsy added this lovely nostalgia to the chorus.
Yeah, he told me it was like a Van Morrison bit. His Van Morrison bit was how he described it, this walking back through the silver trees bit, yeah. And
kind of also that it brings in that kind of, which I was dealing with it as in the past, here and now, future. It was kind of all just one thing, one time. But he kind of added this kind of maybe nostalgic looking back at that. It could be first love that you have. It could be family. And again, maybe that's why it touches people. It takes them back to a time and place where all the things we thought were important, you see the other bit, which is your family. Or not always, some people's family are very dysfunctional and not a good place, or those first friendships or the friendships you've kept through life, or however it is, there was a wind of almost melancholy looking back. And I thought that was really nice. And also Paul's song was kind of, in a way, was a kind of throwback to that kind of gentle summer, kind of almost like Style Council. I'm not going to say that, but it was that kind of feeling about it, where that long hot summer kind of thing to it. It just felt chilled, and I love it. I love it, and regardless of my bit, I love it, and I love it because I've been able to be part of it. It's a privilege.
Well, it's such a clever lyric as well, and where it comes from, that kind of circle of the idea that we start with nothing, we came together by having nothing, but then this idea that by having nothing, that we realized that we didn't need anything else, or we needed nothing else but each other. A lovely full circle of realization.
It's only by having nothing. It's kind of making a positive about what happens if we had had loads? Would our friendship have been the same? If we'd have had Xboxes and we could have afforded to go to the pictures and we could have gone out and discussed the best pair of trainers to wear. I'm not knocking kids can't have that relationship now. I'm just saying that we had nothing.
Or if you met Suggs when he was on that journey, he was already in the band, he was hitting number one or whatever with the friendship, and you weren't. Was that fun?
And we had neither of us had any skin in the game. There was no skin in the game. There was no lever. There was nothing. And it's only by having nothing where we left with each other and went, well, better go on with it then, haven't we? What are we going to do?
But also that idea of that's enough for me, that you're it. It's a love song, isn't it? I mean, that's what I was saying to Paul.
Absolutely, 100% is a love song to my friend. 100%. It's meant as a love song to my friend and our friendship. I don't make any equivocation about that. I'm going to dress it up as anything else. That's exactly what it was. A love song to our friendship and to each other. And to each other. Not him, but to each other.
And that must have meant the world to Suggs when you sent that through, didn't it?
What did he say?
He didn't.
I bet he said, fuck all.
No, he did say it was lovely, and it meant.
I did. Oh, it was lovely. Yeah, it was lovely. It's really nice. Wanker.
Well, the first thing he did was send it to Paul. That was what it was, I think. But Paul said it really related to it because it reminded of him and his family when they were starting out, this kind of working class background. They had absolutely nothing as well. And that journey that it took to get to the Jam and all that,
Yeah, I can think, I don't want to speak on Paul's top, but he did say a little bit about that recently. And when that family have nothing, you start to see his progression and I suppose their backing of him. Do you know what I mean? Their belief in him, and it took him back to that time. It took him back to that place of nothing, where yet you had something, And I think that a lot of people might do that. It's taken back to a place of nothing where they had something, It's and that's where it took Paul back to, And that song has the ability to maybe translate into someone else's life, and then they can apply it to themselves. So I think that's really important with good songwriting, or I think that's really important that you can take that, own it yourself, and narrate your own life with that song. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it's as lovely as it is to hear your story and what this song means to you. Once it's out in the world, it then becomes something we hear, and listeners to on the radio wouldn't necessarily know this story, and that song takes on a meaning to them if they connect with it. That's the whole thing, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Who wants a song what was that song? You're So Vain. Remember that song, You're So Vain? I mean, we all know the song You're So Vain, but you can't help but remember that it's about Carly Simon and Warren Beatty, you know what I mean? I don't want it to be about my love letter to Suggs, do you know what I mean? I don't want it to be about us two. I want everyone to take something else they can out of it without having to go, oh, that's the song about. That's personal between us, but everyone get what they can out of it apart from that,
Now, my understanding is that you went to see Paul a little while ago. Was that right? So this conversation initially was over the phone, but have you met in person now properly?
No. Well, Paul said in some interview the other day he thinks he's never met me. Not true.
Not true.
Not true. Well, I'm sure we bumped into each other. I'm sure I saw him play at the Roxy, and maybe did he play the Greffel and Grand or somewhere, one of those dodgy sort of pub club things. But that would have been in passing while he's playing. But I definitely, because it's in Lee Thompson, the sax player's biography, I definitely saw him about 1979 at a Hotel Tropicana in Los Angeles. You could read more about that in Lee's biography, because he tried gate crash me into. It's a long story, but he definitely, which I think it involved me stealing his clothes.
Lee's or Paul's?
Paul's clothes. I stole all his clothes for some certain reason. He had to jump into a swimming pool. I don't know. It's a long story that Lee knows more about. Yeah, so I definitely met him then. And I even found, you know what's weird? I found a Polaroid of Paul from that time because it was all in my Los Angeles bit. Don't worry, Paul. I've made no copies. Wearing a red leather jacket. I think he'd probably borrowed off the Buggles or somewhere. Or, you know, you'll make fashion faux pas. It's all right, Paul. I'll get rid of it. I'll burn it.
Well, what would have been lovely is you being a mod with this moment in around like 92, 93, where there's a massive Madness comeback and there's the Finsbury Park gig and the Madstock thing. But then there's also Paul Weller comeback and he's talking about his love of mod and he's on Jonathan Ross talking about Bury Me a Mod and all that. You're told two worlds, again, these are colliding, aren't they? And
I don't know if Paul agreed, but I'm not a mod. I'm mod, but I'm not a mod.
What's the difference?
A mod is standing like that. Mod is like a continuing. It's like that inner thing. I am mod means I'm constantly moving forward in how I dress, what I wear, you know, how I adapt to what's going on now. I'm not anachronistic. I'm not a caricature set back in time, you know, like saying I'm a Dickensian and I have a big curly moustache and wear a spectacle and I'm mod, which means, yeah, I've got a beautiful 70s kid glove leather jacket on. You know, that's now, but it's now. You know, Paul was wearing saw him in a lovely suit the other day. It's a suit now. It's not harking back to any time. No, it's not harking back to, well, it should have had 3 buttons on it and 2 inches above your ankle. And no, it's now. So I think a mod is what people will label, and mod is something that is, you know, you move forward, you carry with you.
Yeah, back to that mindset thing as well, isn't it? And certainly through Paul's music, you see that where he's constantly pushing forward. It's like, what is the next thing? Even 66 sounds so different to Fat Pop, the last album, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that, I might have said this to Suggsy years ago, that Paul got ahead of the game before anyone else by getting out of the game and staying ahead of it. And I think that came with Style Council. I think leaving the Jam that sort of solid, this is what we are. And then that, I don't think it was a reinvention. This is my own view. It wasn't a reinvention. It's like, it's who he was. It's like he came out, he went, this is what we were. This is the caricature of it all. But this is me. So that mod, not a mod, but that mod thing that helps you keep moving forward, keeps you learning more, keeps you on the creative edge. And that's from inside. So you live on your creative edge, which means you're kind of always reinventing yourself or finding something new or curious. And if he doesn't know what it is, you're never going to know until it comes out. He always stays out of the game by staying ahead of it. You can't turn around. The music game can't say the next Paul Weller thing. They don't know.
No.
Which is punk in its way. You know what I mean? I remember when all the A&R men used to come down to the Roxy with their perms and their satin jackets going, and they've been told, go down and sign a punk band. On a Monday, come back and go, did you sign one? No, they're all shit. Yeah, sign any shit you can. And it's a bit like that. You know, you can't, it's unique in that way where you can't pigeonhole him because he's already moved on. And I think that's why Paul keeps that fan base and they stay with him. You know, because you want to know what that next creative edge is there.
And you want to be surprised, don't you? You don't know where it's going to go. Where's he taking me next? And will I still be along the journey? You know, we'll still be along for the ride. Strap on in.
Yeah, and with that, sometimes it's not going to hit for you. But it should be that way where it doesn't always hit for you. And the next time you look forward to the next one, you know, you're not going to be bored following that journey, are you?
Yeah.
And I love this album.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must be buzzing as well. So Peter Blake cover as well. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah. I'm not really asked about Peter Blake. I was brought up with a lot of artists. He's all right, but, you know, there's better. Am I allowed to say that?
Or is you can say whatever you want, man.
That's the same thing. He's all right. Yeah, fine. You know, I mean, I like the cover. It's all right. Yeah, it's good.
And did you know they've been performing the song live? Had you seen that? Because they did the tour earlier on this year, Japan and Australia, and that was part of the set list. Nothing was part of the set list.
Yeah, Paul said he played it at Shepherd's Bush, and I was meant to go along to meet him there. And he said it went down. It went down really well. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning after the gig. He's like, it went down really well. It's like, well, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, so he must mean it. He's not going to sort of half say it like in the morning. Go, yeah, it sort of went down well. And I do know that he's been playing it. Not really where and when and how and who.
What was lovely was the fact that it was in the set list, the first set list of the year. And then, like you say, the Shepherd's Bush gig would have been April. So all the way through, it's not something he played a couple of times and was like, oh, yeah, it doesn't really work live. It's like, no, it's still in the set list right towards the latest gig it was there.
Yeah, and my mum sent me a post through because she's now an avid follower of Paul Weller.
Brilliant.
And I think it's her sent me, or I sent her a link or something. She said, have you read the feedback? And I had a feedback on the song. And it was just all these people that fans or people who've been to see it were giving feedback on the song. And it was all so authentic and genuine, you know, that the feedback on it, it was just like, wow. That landed for people.
Mad, isn't it? That little poem that you wrote for your mate, your own thing.
And the funny thing is, I'd kind of not retreated. I just sort of sat up. I live in this sort of caravan-y cabin on top of a hill overlooking the sea and Beachy Head and the Downs and the countryside. And I'd sat there sort of just pottering about, you know, doing nothing, basically. Hey, but as Bertrand Russell said, you know, if you enjoy the time you're wasting, you're not wasting time. And that proved to be the fact. I was sitting there doing nothing, and out of that nothing came a creative poem. So it was only by sitting there doing bugger all and chilling out that it came. And there's some positives about sitting about and doing nothing and letting the world go past you. And
Paul has a love of poetry. That's often how many of his great lyrics have started. I imagine he now wants to spend some time with you just looking through you. What else have you got, man?
Thousands I've got in my head, and maybe some that I've written down somewhere. Loads. I mean, loads.
Who knows where this could go next?
What sort of poetry did you like?
I don't know, actually. I mean, but he used to like the, what would you call them, like the Liverpool poet back in the day?
Oh, right. Yeah.
But no, I think, everything. Yeah. Final question. So this is going to be hard. You're allowed one Paul Weller song for the rest of your life. It can be the Jam, the Style Council, or solo. What would you go with?
Well, I'm going to be really transparent here. I'm going to out myself and say that I had to take a lot of time to think about it. You asked me it before and you gave me a bit of time to think about it.
We gave him 24 hours, folks.
We gave it 24 hours because it weren't sitting comfortable with the answer, and then it came to me. And I think Paul Weller fans will get this is I had no trouble picking a song. That weren't the difficulty. The difficulty I had was picking a Paul Weller. If you push me, what Paul Weller is there? Is there the Jam Paul Weller, or is there the Style Council Paul Weller? Is there the Stanley Road Paul Weller? And I think if you push me, I could choose one song from each of them. But they're oranges and apples. It's a bit like if you told me to pick one status quo song that I dislike the most, I'd say, pick any of the ones that sound just exactly like all the others. It wouldn't make any difference to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't do that with Paul Weller. A bit like we're talking about the A&R men going out to look for a punk band is. You can imagine someone going, go out and find me a Paul Weller looky-like, and then running out and then going, okay, and then come back and then, what one? So it's so hard. Well, it was easy to pick a song, but I couldn't pick the Paul Weller.
It does absolutely make sense. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
So it depends on where you are within that going. So I've decided, in the spirit of modernity, I decided what I'll go for is anything off the new album.
Okay.
If I can't have anything, then I'm going to choose nothing.
Which can be taken in two ways.
Well, that sounds like a great place to lead, eh?
Chalky, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, real pleasure. Thanks a lot. I've enjoyed it.
A reminder, if you've enjoyed this episode of the Paul Weller Fan Podcast, you can find a whole box set packed full of brand new episodes. The Story of 66, available now wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and more, or at paulwellerfanpodcast.com. Whilst you're on my website, why not head into our store, grab yourself a virtual coffee. It's always nice to get a little thanks for this free content. Much appreciated. All available online, paulwellerfanpodcast.com. And here's the big ask. Please do spread the word on social media. So many amazing people giving their time for free to chat to me on these episodes of the podcast. So I'd love it if you could spread the word. Facebook, Instagram, and X. Tell everybody about the Story of 66, this celebration of the brand new album from Paul Weller. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.